So, we're going to dive right in today to a number of topics surrounding crisis pregnancy centers and your office. Let's just start there. One of your offices in Buffalo, New York, sustained an arson attack. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah, sure. So let me back up 2 weeks before the arson attack happened on June 7th. We were getting lots of activity around the office in Buffalo and in Rochester, specifically related to the encouragements that cell groups were getting from the domestic terrorist group Jane's Revenge. So we reported it to local police and the FBI. And then 2 weeks later, I got a call at 2:30 in the morning on June 7th from my Buffalo regional executive saying he's going over to the office because their smoke alarms are going off. When he arrived, the police and fire rescue had gotten there before him, and they found all the glass in the facility broken and the fires were lit. And the damage was catastrophic. We had to and the signature kind of scrawl of the domestic terrorist group Jane's Revenge, the graffiti on the side of the building read "Jane was here." A couple days later, they took responsibility for that firebombing as well as multiple others, insisting that if we didn't shut down, it would get worse and it wouldn't be so easily cleaned up as fire and graffiti, saying it's open season, they said, on pregnancy centers. 6 days after that, 6 days after we were firebombed, not only did New York Governor Hochul and Letitia James not criminalize the violence, but they came out with signed a bill essentially investigating pregnancy centers. And while she was at the press conference signing this bill, she referred to us as subhuman. She called us Neanderthals. I mean, it's like something out of a dystopian novel.
Well, that was going to be my question to you. I have a lot of questions about the center itself and the damage, but before we go there,
Yeah.
I think I know the answer based on what you're saying, but has the state in any way been helpful? Did anybody reach out after this? This was obviously a big story. There have been multitudes now of centers across the country that have been attacked. Was there any sort of communication with any officials at the state level and with you and your team?
There were a few state officials that came out denouncing the violence, and specifically denouncing violence to pro-life organizations and people. But in terms of state officials in New York, New York Governor Hochul didn't, Letitia James didn't. We received no phone calls from any state official directly. Saying they were sorry for what happened and if there's anything they could do to help. So there was a dearth, let's say, of response, and it wasn't like we were the first one to be attacked. We just happened to receive the worst of the attacks, and the attacks continue to this day. As a matter of fact, one of our partner centers in Massachusetts just got attacked a couple days ago. So yeah, it has been a little disappointing, and instead of reaching out and saying, "Hey, let's enforce the law equally. Let's protect all of our citizens equally," Governor Hochul essentially sent $10 million to private practice abortionists to increase their security, and hasn't done not a single thing. Really, not even allocating additional resources from local state law enforcement to protect pro-life organizations. Nothing like that. So
that was my next question about security and protection, because that is something I would imagine after this happened, the staff are nervous that, this is just the natural reaction after an event like this. So you're telling me there's been support for the pro-choice side, but there has not been security support for you. What are you guys doing for security? How have you had to change in light of what has happened?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I must say that local police have been very interested in helping us. Local police have been very, very responsive. They put out a special alert. They're keeping an eye on our facilities. The sheriff's departments in the counties where I live and where one of our other executives lives are very sensitive to our situation. We've been doxxed. The Jane's Revenge people are trying to find out where we live. I had to relocate my family for a time due to threats. There's been some good response from local law enforcement. I must say that state law enforcement, federal law enforcement, it appears, now I don't know this for sure because they haven't gotten any. They have made no official reports, no public reports, etc. And it just appears, at least on the state level, that they're being politicized. With respect to our security, we've had to amp up our security. It's cost us tens of thousands of dollars. It was not in the budget, as you can well imagine. We don't receive any state or federal money, never have, and all this was totally revolutionized the way we behave in terms of security. We go out to the parking lot with two people. We don't stay in the office alone. All sorts of protocols like that were put into place, and additional security just to strengthen the perimeter of our facilities too have been put in place. In addition, I can't tell you all the other things because I don't want some of that to be breached, but.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting because one of the things that has happened here almost immediately was sort of an attack on crisis pregnancy centers. And this debate has gone on and on over the years, but right now, obviously, this started with the draft leak first of Dobbs, right? Obviously, for those watching, the Dobbs decision is what overturned Roe v. Wade. When that draft report came out of what the final decision was going to look like, that's when a lot of this started. Now, obviously, we've had the final decision overturning Roe, and it's kicked up and it's notched up quite a bit, this activity. But one of the things that is often said is that crisis pregnancy centers are deceptive, that they lie to women to get women in the door, that you're not providing any medical services. How do you respond to some of those critiques, which, again, are really getting louder right now?
They are getting louder. You're right. And the fact of the matter is that the abortion industry is engaging in massive consumer fraud, and the pro-abortion politicians are trying to cover that up by silencing the truth tellers. And the only truth tellers that are able to get access to women seriously considering abortion are pregnancy centers who provide ethical medical care and comprehensive community support. Those are the truth tellers. Those are the ones providing true informed consent. We're the ones that are actually reaching women considering abortion and helping them understand not only her specific medical condition, but how that medical condition would be impacted by an abortion, and chemical abortion and surgical abortion. For example, if 54% of all abortions in America right now are chemical abortions. Chemical abortion has been proven by a peer-reviewed medical journal article out of Finland saying that they're 400% more dangerous than surgical abortion. And yet they're being touted by teleabortionists in America as safer than Tylenol. That is consumer fraud writ large. And what are pregnancy centers doing? We're trying to reach these women to actually give them a true understanding of what they're getting into, to empower them to make the most difficult choice and have the baby by giving them all the information that they need, all the support and security that they need in order to give them a vision of their future after having had a child.
What does just so people understand this, right? Because the perception that people on the pro-choice, some have, is that women come to you, they're deceived into coming, right? They come to you and then you convince them not to have a baby and then nothing ever happens again. So let's talk about the services you actually do offer. How do you help women so people can understand that?
Sure. Well, the pregnancy centers like CompassCare provide for, like I said, the unmet health and resource needs of women facing unplanned pregnancy. And the way we do that is by providing baseline OB care. First of all, we do pregnancy diagnosis. Is it possible to have a positive pregnancy test at home and not have a viable pregnancy, a pregnancy that will naturally continue on its own? And the answer is yes, 25% of the time. Oddly, that's good news for her, but she needs a medical interaction to determine that. Number two, how far along am I? That's the question that we help her answer. How far along in the pregnancy are you? If a woman is, depending on where she is in the pregnancy, will determine the type of abortion procedure she will be eligible for, and that impacts costs, it impacts side effects, all sorts of things. She doesn't know any of this, and the abortionist is not going to give her that information. Again, informed consent. The third question that we help her answer is it important to know if I have an STD? If a woman tests positive for one of the most common STDs, like chlamydia, for example, and she does not get treatment before an abortion, she increases her risk of pelvic inflammatory disease by 25% within the first 4 weeks after the procedure. PID causes ectopic pregnancies, internal scarring. It impacts her future reproductive health, and she, of course, values that and wants to protect that. And then beyond that, we provide all sorts of there isn't anything that we don't connect her with throughout the pregnancy and beyond. Material assistance, financial aid, health insurance, parenting classes, mentors, mother care, church relationships. The nursing care goes on throughout the pregnancy and the follow-up with all these organizations that we connect her with. There isn't anything that we don't help her with. throughout the pregnancy and beyond. We believe that all people are made in the image of God and deserving of blessing and protection, both the mother and the child equally.
And so you answered a lot of questions there about what is offered, what is provided. That runs counter to the narrative, and as you know, against crisis pregnancy centers. What you just said. Now, when we look at what is happening, there are all sorts of moves coming from people, all the way from Senator Elizabeth Warren, who has been basically calling on crisis pregnancy centers to be punished and investigated, it sounds like, and other politicians who have called on Google to intervene. What has surprised you most about some of these interventions? And if you want to take us through some of the ones that maybe we haven't even heard of, that'd be great.
Yeah, so this is an all-out war on pregnancy centers. And what I mean by that is, instead of protecting them, they're being threatened. Many people think that these are bona fide hate crimes. No arrests have been made, and the motto of Jane's Revenge, the pro-abortion terrorist organization, the motto is that if abortion isn't safe, then neither are you. And that seems to be the motto that is being embraced by these pro-abortion politicians, saying if abortion isn't safe, pregnancy centers, then neither are you. And the reason I say that is because they have an all-out attack on shutting down pregnancy centers' ability to actually reach and serve women seriously considering abortion. As you mentioned, Elizabeth Warren came out saying we need to shut down these crisis pregnancy centers. 21 attorneys general came out basically saying we're going to do everything we can to make sure that women have access to, they're refusing to enforce the Mann Act, which is another interesting point. You can't transport women across state lines to cover up sex crimes, and that's exactly what a lot of these abortionists are doing. Then you've got the Biden administration that came out last Friday signing an executive order asking Attorney General Merrick Garland not to investigate the terrorist attacks, but to investigate pregnancy centers' quote unquote fraudulent practices. The fraudulent practices, and then you've got other multiple places like Attorney General Letitia James asking Google to wipe us off the map so that they can't find us. I mean, the whole thing is, trying to cover for a fraudulent $1 billion abortion business that had to change overnight on June 24th when the Dobbs case came out. They now have to go to a hub and spoke model. It's similar to what would happen if the federal government went to the Ford Motor Company and said, hey, tomorrow you can't have dealerships in 30 states. I mean, that would be an existential threat and to the business model. And so that's exactly what the abortion industry is facing. And they've got these pro-abortion politicians, which are simply tools of the abortion industry, trying to shut down the only competition these abortionists have. We've got presence in all 50 states, and now these abortion businesses only have a presence in a handful. So, it's they're attacking the competition. They're not attacking us on any form of truth whatsoever. We're the ones that are providing informed consent. They're the ones that are lying.
Last question for you. It's interesting. For a lot of years, Planned Parenthood has said that abortion is only 3% of what they do. And you get this sort of conversation going quite a bit from them. What do you anticipate will happen? And this is speculation, but you have, as you said, a handful of states really allowing abortion. New York, where you are, is one of them. And you have a lot of states restricting abortion. What do you anticipate happens with a lot of those clinics that were providing abortions in those states where it's now obviously restricted or disallowed? Is Planned Parenthood going to move more towards those Democratic states? Are they going to keep those clinics open since abortion's only allegedly 3% of what they do? What do you see happening?
Well, the masks are off. And so are the gloves. We're going to find out a lot of these. We've already seen abortion clinics shutting down. Why? Because their primary business model is abortion. That's how they make their money. That's what they're there for. And if they can't do abortion, then they simply shut down. We've seen it already happening in multiple states. And so there's a tremendous amount of infrastructure, I think, that the pro-life pregnancy center industry has an opportunity to pick up pennies on the dollar, and start serving women before they travel and before they go online. In fact, we've got global telehealth partners that are joining us to deliver 21st century tools to these pregnancy centers in all 50 states so they can reach 900,000 women. That's all the women in America who are seriously considering abortion, and serve them before they travel and before they go online to get their chemical abortion. That is a major threat to the abortion industry. And they're moving to this hub and spoke model where women are going to have to travel from their conservative states to the more abortion hub states like New York, as you mentioned, and or send them the dangerous some chemical abortion drugs in the mails, and they would have the abortion at home, which is horrific.
Well, Reverend Harden, thank you so much for taking the time, for taking us through this. I know it's been a difficult time for your organization. There's a lot happening in the country and in New York in particular, so we appreciate you joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.